Good evening, good evening, good evening. Do I need, I'm not sure if I'll need that one, so I'll leave that back there. Okay, and I think. Okay, so hello, everyone. We are getting started. Hello. And I am doing the big debate between the colors, but we have here the block, one of the blocks for the disappearing 9 patch. Awesome. How are you doing, Miss Topaz? Okay. So we are going to make 4 of these, and then we are going to decide on a layout. So whether we will stack them one right behind the other to make the beginning of a table runner, or whether we will stack them 2 by 2 like a 4 patch, and then talk about the possibilities of a table topper. So table runner would go long ways, and it could fit the length of your table or longer, or shorter. It doesn't have to go the whole length, but it would sit in the middle. You can add your decorations to it, or you could do a table topper, which sits in the center of your table. Thank you for the donuts. That would sit in the center of your table, and then that would give you the option of just decorating that center, but you wouldn't have anything on either sides. So either way, that's up to you. It depends on your table space. It depends on what you see fit. So depending on where it sits in my house, it makes a difference. So some places work better with something wider. Some places work with something more square. But we're gonna get started. So we'll pull this out from time to time, but this is the main block that we will be making. Yours may look similar or different depending on what you choose to do. So let's get started. We'll set that over there to the side. So I have scraps. You could have been very intentional with your fabric. I do believe in getting rid of my scraps because I think that it's always a great idea to use up that fabric you have, and I don't like to throw away fabric. So I have some Ankara scraps that I have from dresses and other items that I have made, and I'm going to use these up today. I decided that I wanted to add a bit of pop to it with a consistent color. So either to go with the white or the black. So when we talked about layouts, and we'll lay some out just to make those final decisions, white will look one way, which is like this. And then just imagine having the darker color here. If it's sitting on your table, you may not want white, because if you have kids, or if you're just little off track yourself and clumsy, you may say, well, you know what? I don't want to use white or lighter colors because they get dirty. Again, that's up to you. So we're going to set up our 9s. Why am I going to say 4s? So I'm going to take my fabric, and what I want to do is lay it out. And I will talk about this in a minute, just so that what you're thinking about is the way that you want it to go before you get started. That way you don't have to sew everything together. And I have white on white fabric, which means that the little leaves need to show up on the right side, which is why I'm looking at both sides. Okay. So here is what could be my 9 patch. Okay. When I slice this in half, this is going to be the one that gets cut twice. These are the ones that are going to remain whole. So if you have fabrics that you want to keep as the center of attention and you don't want to cut them up, then you leave them out here. If this is the one that you want cut up in the center, again, you can flip-flop your 9-patch any way that you would like. And again, this is up to you. This has nothing to do with me. But you can change it any way you like. It's up to you. So it could be as organized as you like it to be, or it could be as scrappy as you like it to be. Scrappy means you're going to have more different colors mixed up in there. So I can change these out to something different as well. But when I slice it, I'm slicing this way. So that means this block will be the little squares. So those are these right here. So, and that's why I moved it to black, just so that you could kind of see the difference. So the black in the middle then becomes these little squares here, no matter what you decide your layout to be. The 2 gold ones and these 2 blue ones are these outer ones out here. And then what got sliced long ways for the rectangles are these here. So you're going to make your decision how you want this to look. I think I want to go a little more scrappier. So that way, if I don't have what I need for each one, I'm not going to be mad later that I ran out of strips. So let's change this out. And let's go that way. Let me make a decision. Do I want that white in there, or do I want to go with the black squares? Okay, so you're kind of playing around with this until you get the thing that works for you. So again, this is the same thing. These are going to remain the same. This is the one that's going to be cut up. And then these are going to be sliced so that they become the rectangles. So again, the squares are going to be this one, the small squares. The bigger squares that don't get cut are those out here. And the ones that look like this, the white, are going to now be black. Okay. And I think I have enough black ones if I count it correctly. If I'm happy with this, what I'm going to do now, 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I count that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to double check my blacks, because if I need to cut 2 real quick, but I think I have it. 1, 2, 3, 4. What I'm doing is I'm just going to stack them, because I'm going to make all of my 9 patches at the same time. So I'm making 4 blocks, and I'm making sure that there are 4 of these. Why would I have one short? I know I have one. Okay, because I knew I counted. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have a total of 16 that are stacked now, 4 in each row. And now and 4 in each one of these sections. So now I just need 4 in either of these sections, just so that I have what I need to start chain piecing. So again, to do this, I'm just going to make sure that I go section by section. I got a lot of these blues. Okay, some people are going to drop something on the floor and drive themselves banana with that one. Okay. So that's the second one. And I know I'm going to have some repeats, and I'm okay with that. This is going to be the third one. 1, 2, 3, and that's that one, and then I have one more to go. 1, 2. Just make sure I'm using all my colors that I want to use. Did I put 4 in here? 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Let's change this one over here. Put my green there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let me just see. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then let's chop up one of these. Okay. Okay, put that in the right direction. Okay. So I've now arranged all of my squares the way that I want them to go. I'm going to set everything else off to the side because it goes into the abyss of squares. And I do keep, and this is just some of the ones that I've cut up, but some of the quilts that I've made over the past month. I have purple still here. So I have the whites that I use for the quilt I just finished, but I have all these sitting in a pile ready to go for any of the patches or scrappy projects that I need. So everything is together. Now it's time to begin to put them, to assemble them. Now, somebody is trying to finish her thread. So this is the thread that I have left on this spool. So I am going to finish that because, yeah, it doesn't make sense to keep it all. So I'm going to get rid of that, and then I'll switch the rest of that out as well. Okay, I don't need my ruler. Let's slide this into view. I'm ready to slide that over just a bit. And I'll slide my body over, maybe that'll help. Okay. So hello, everyone, and welcome in. We are working on the disappearing 9 patch today. So we have set up our 9 patches. We have laid everything out, and we have our 9 blocks or the 9 patches that we're going to make up this 9 patch block that we're going to make. So we are going to sew it together, and it will look like this, which is a traditional 9 patch. Once we do that and we get them all sewn together, pressed out, then we are going to make them disappear so that we create this block here. Okay, so our end goal is this block. So to get started, again, just through the muddling and thinking and mumbling, I decided on the layout. So I just took you through my process of how I lay things out. And I like to think about it. I'm auditioning it. And so, of course, yes, there was some pre-thought to it just because of the live, and we weren't going to be here until Christmas trying to figure out how to get something together as I would offline, because there's a bigger process that I might use. This is very scrappy. So I just, predetermined some things. But I also walk through with you the why. And so the why for me is, if this is a 9 patch, I just decide what I want it to be and I'll stitch it together. Because this is a disappearing 9 patch, some things happen to this that I want to consider when I am creating the block. One of those things is that when you cut this, you're going to cut it in half, the block. And you're going to cut it in half again, so vertically and horizontally. Because of these 2 cuts, this center block is going to get cut twice, which means it's going to make smaller little squares out of this big square. So the one that you want to be the smallest is the one that fits in the center. Why is this important? Let's say that you fussy cut something, and fussy cut means you picked out a particular picture, let's say a bird. And you don't want to cut the bird in half. You want it to stay whole. You can place them out here, and these never get cut. Then the plain fabric or something that you don't mind getting sliced down into further pieces can get cut right in here. These are going to get cut in half, and they're just going to get cut in half to look like a rectangle. So make it cut in half like this. So if that matters to you what that looks like, and I want it to border, so I wanted these to be solid. But this could be completely scrappy. You can make it completely scrappy all the way around and just have the center be solid. This is yours. So you can kind of play around with it and see what it does. But if you use similar themes, it will always work. So if I use Ankara, it's not going to matter how I mix it up because I'm using the scrappy Ankara look. And so if I change the way it looks, it's still going to work for me. But I would just keep the consistent pattern, if you will, throughout, just so that you get similar looks. So you're deciding what this is going to look like. Okay. Just like I do with the 4-patch, I like to take my pieces, and in the columns, I flip, in this case, column 3 over to column 2. And I'm going to sew these 2 together, 3 together, at 1/4 inch. So I'm flipping 3 over to 2. You could flip down if you prefer. I just like to flip from right to left. I'm going to take them to my machine, and I am going to stitch 1/4 inch seam. Again, for my newbies out here, 1/4 inch is what our standard seam allowance is when we are quilting. Are there a couple exceptions to the rule where people will do a little bit more than 1/4 inch? Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. If I were taking this patchwork and I were turning this into a jacket, I might choose, especially if I'm not going to quilt it, to go with a 1/2 inch seam, so that the washing and the pulling of the jacket as I'm wearing it, it won't pull apart faster on me over time, because the woven threads are going to loosen up over time, and through the washes and everything else like that, it's going to continue to unravel, and there's a possibility that you might have breaks. So some people will take that into consideration, and they may want to do a little bit more than 1/4 inch. Okay, so everything is chain pieced. And so it's all together. And I'm going to lay this back out just so that you could see it. And then what we do is take one and we flip it over to the center. And then we're going to do the same thing. You can break the threads if you like. I'm going to leave them whole. And I'll show you what that does when I do it. I need this one. And sometimes it twists on me. So, but the good thing is that they're just chained together, and all it takes is a piece of snips, it takes a pair of snips or a pair of scissors. Okay, last one over here. So we're finishing up that final one. We are working in rows. We started with columns 1 and 2, and now I'm adding column 3. Hey, Cynthia, how are you doing, darling? And hello, 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 everyone else, if I missed you. And here we go. So now, with the exception, all of the rows are together. And the only thing that we have left to do is put sew the rows. We've sewed the individual blocks together to make up the rows, and now we all you have to do is sew the rows together to make up the blocks. If you like to live dangerously, you can just finger press this rather than using your iron. That's totally up to you. Just make sure that everything is straight if you do it. My suggestion either is you can press your seams to the dark side or to the center for the first one. You can press them outwards for the second row and press them back inwards if you like to press to one side for the third row. That way it'll help you to nest your seams. If you are team open, you can absolutely sit there and open up your seams so they lay flat. There's no nesting with this because they're laying flat, and there's less hills and bumps when it comes to quilting this. And some people care and some people don't. And one thing about me is that I am team whatever is comfortable for you and whatever makes sense to you. We talk about the difference between the two, and then we make the best decision that we make for ourselves. Some people are bent on the way that somebody taught them, and there's no changing their mind. And then there are those of us that may say, well, that makes sense, and I think I like it that way, so I think I'll try it that way. But either way, this is your quilt, your way. So I just kind of finger press these open. And what I'm going to do is take these first two units, and because I chain pieced and didn't cut them apart, they're just going to function as one unit. Again, that's totally up to you. But I'm going to take each one and find those seams, and I'm going to line those seams up. I start with my seams. I do not start end to end, because if the blocks happen to be a little bit off, I want to make sure the seams line up, because that's important for me in this block. And so I prioritize that. If the seams didn't matter if they lined up or not, I could go end to end. But it matters that these seams line up. Those two are together. We'll take them to the machine. And I could have chain pieced all of these. Sometimes I do, but right now it just makes sense to do one to start, especially for someone who has never seen a 9-patch or has never seen how a disappeared 9-patch works. One thing about using this type of fabric, which I love to use, is that the wovens are different. So they're going to respond differently when I am stitching these together. So there may be some places that will pull very well together, and then other places that won't, because they don't have as much stretch. So you can see how everything lined up here. But here, if you could tell, it's a little bit off, and you really can't even tell that, but it is. If it bothers me, and I said this in a previous video, I'm cutting it out. Tonight, and I'm going to redo it. I'm not cutting it out, I'm ripping it out. I'm going to rip it out and redo it. Tonight, I'm not worried about it because it's not that far off that it's going to matter. Hey, RV. And now I'm going to do the other two rows together. One of the things that I say, accuracy is important. However, it is not bad advice to tell somebody to move on. You get better at some things with practice. So the more you practice, the better you get. So there are some of you who may be working on this and you're like, no, my stuff didn't line up. And that's okay. if it's close, it works. If it's far off, it doesn't. And if you're taking the time to make sure that those seams kind of match up, and this is one of the reasons why I do prefer to press to the one side, because when you nest, you almost guarantee it. But if it doesn't work, it's okay. This is a scrappy quilt. You're using your scraps, and this is the time to practice, see what works, what doesn't work. Did it make sense for you to use pins? Your clips didn't grip the way that you wanted them to. Some of these don't have the teeth that I need them to have, and that's fine. Okay, so I'm clipping again, lining those seams up, and I'm going to take it to my machine again and press. And again, I can feel the difference. Even though the Encarta has cotton in it, it is processed a little bit differently than quilter's cotton, because there may be some wax in there with the prints. It may have a little bit of a blend, so it may not be totally cotton, and so it may not stretch the same way that quilter's cotton does. Because you're also, the way you cut these squares, you may have cut some against the warp and some against the weft. You may have cut it crosswise on the grain. So what happens is there's a little bit more stretch in one direction than there is in the other. So some blocks may have a little bit more give than others. Okay, so again, everything is lined up and ready to go. So we only have that one little area, but here is our finished 9 patch. Okay, so 1 down, 3 to go. I'm going to press them all at one time. So we're going to repeat again, rinse, wash, and repeat. Flip column 3 for me. It doesn't matter. You could do 2 to 3. I mean 1 to 2. That I am doing 3 to 2. And then I flip 1 to 2. I just flip that way. I'm picking these up. Make sure everything is lined up the way that it should be. Taking it back to my machine, 1/4 inch. To be honest with you, with the 1/4 inch seam, it's about consistency. I wouldn't do less than a 1/4 inch. But for some reason, if you're doing half, stick with a half. Don't start with a 1/4 and then do halves and then go back to quarters, because it does change. You want the consistency of the blocks to remain the same. But again, for this purpose, it's a 1/4 inch. We're not doing anything more than a 1/4 inch. Okay, chain stitch together. I would not, for me, have to open these up like this, but just to show you again, that's there. So they're still in the same order. And this is just, I make mistakes. So let me tell you how many times I have to rip something out because I don't go back and check to see what's going on. I can take this row, this last one, this is column 3, and attach that to row 1. And I can just clip it. It doesn't have to be perfect, because remember, I didn't clip those pieces in between the chains. I'm going to clip here, and then I will clip here. Okay. And we will take this back to the machine. So again, you can kind of see that each row is made and they're still all connected. And just keeping it just helps to keep them in order when you chain piece, but it also allows you to use a little less thread. I did not. Again, I just did a finger press, but you can absolutely press as you go. Pressing will guarantee a better look than if you finger press. But I did want to show you the finger press method because some people like to work like a factory and they'll just press at the end. The seams at the edges are what's important, and then you can press out everything else when you finish all that. But again, it's up to you. Okay. So if we open this back up again, you can see that the rows are together for the 9 patch. And you can see all the little threads that are coming out over the place because it is fraying apart like it's nobody's business. Okay. Okay. So they're all together. So again, if you are coming in late, we are making a 9 patch. We're making 4 of them. So we have 1 down. And then we're going to make it disappear and to make it look like this block. So we're taking the 9 patch, we're doing some cuts, and it's going to look like this. Okay. So we have block number 2 in the making. They're all just kind of hanging out together here, chained up. I flip them over on their backs. And then let me press this one open. I'm trying not to mess up my rows because, yeah. And if I throw the blocks off just a little bit, it's not the end of the world. I just want to make sure that I keep that pattern of the black fabric where it is more than I care about where the colored fabrics go. The thing is that if you had a particular rhyme or reason to it, you want to keep it in order. So I'm just pressing my seams open. So the other one, I just took my fingers and pressed them open. This one, I am actually taking my iron and pressing them open. Again, this is up to you, which way you prefer to do it. It's not a wrong way, but again, if you press it, you know that it's nice and flat, and it can help with the accuracy. I will not say it is the best for it. It's a better option, but it's not the end of the world if you finger press. And there are plenty of people who finger press and have no problem with their seams lining up. So it's not wrong, but sometimes those flat seams really do. It helps to have those flat seams. So hello again, everyone, as I am pressing. We decided to keep it simple this month as the Black Sewing Network, and we're helping beginners out. So whether you celebrate the holidays or not, a lot of people before the new year comes will get a new machine, and you're like, oh, I always wanted to learn how to sew, or I always wanted to learn how to quilt. And so here's your opportunity to get some tips and tricks in order to be able to do that. Okay. If you follow the Black Sewing Network all week, there are different sew-alongs that you can see and or participate in where you can learn how to make bags and garments. And there'll be a bonnet tomorrow, other simple projects that are great for beginner sewists and or, in my case, quilters. So everything is pressed. We're going to take those seams. I'm taking rows 1 and 2, putting them on top of each other, finding my seams, lining them up, and I'm going to clip. You can clearly pin, but the only time I pin is when I'm sewing garments. I do not pin for my quilts for the most part. I prefer clipping. I'm gonna line those up and clip. If I wanted to, I could open it up and clip on the other side as well. That's up to you. I prefer to do it one row at a time. Just feel like it lays flatter. And then I'm going to stitch. I'm watching my top thread this time because today I'm not playing bobbin chicken. I'm playing thread chicken because I'm almost at the end of a spool. And it just makes sense to let that one run out. So then I can throw that spool in the abyss. And that'll be one less thing that I have when I'm doing inventory. Because when you have a whole bunch of half-used spools, you're saying to yourself that you have everything you need, and then you run out. And you're like, I thought I had enough. And you didn't. Or you're like me and you buy more, and then you're like, I have all these spools. So again, you can see how they line up. And then let's do the other one. You also see the difference with this, that it looks as like a flatter block because those seams have already been pressed. The other block will look like that by the time I finish. But it's just that I pressed the entire seam. I didn't finger press. Okay, cool. These are lined up. And then we'll stitch this side. So we worked, oops, thread came out. We worked on this week. We worked with the 4-patch last week, and we're working with the 9-patch this week. One of the reasons that I like to work in patches is because depending on how you put your quilts together, a lot of times you will put the individual blocks that you're creating together in rows like I'm doing right now, or you'll put them together in blocks. So it's great to see how they kind of go together, because then once you get the hang of that, it makes your life a lot easier when you have to sew a bunch of blocks together. I prefer that, for example, if it is 16 4x4, I don't like to sew 4 across and then 4, and then sew the 4 across down in the rows. I prefer to sew them as 4 patches, just because I think I have better control over the squares, and I can square them up. It's hard to square a row up. Okay, so again, everything is in those corners. So block number 2 is done. Okay. Trying to keep everything in frame. So I'm like, every time I sew, you can see it's moving the fabric. So usually I may have this, let's say, on the other side of my machine. And then that way I would not have them moving, but they're on this side. So they're shifting a little bit, but that's okay. There is a wax on this side, so I know that's the right side for that. Okay, so I am on row 3. I'm on block 3. Again, I'm taking columns 1 and 2, 2 and 3. Okay, I keep cutting this thread a little too short, and it keeps popping back out through the needle. I need to, when I finish that row off, make sure that I am not cutting that short. Okay, I just clip that. So there are, for garment people, there are people who will make patchwork jackets in particular. Quilted jackets are a thing. And so ultimately what we can do, like some of my friends who make the jelly roll from the No Sleep crew, they call this like making another piece of fabric. So you're piecing together pieces, and you are creating what ultimately could be a new piece of fabric that then you can cut up into a garment of some sort. So I can take these, once these are all together, I could make one big quilt out of these. And then I could cut these down to make the back of the jacket, the front of the jacket, the sleeves, or just the front and the back, and then make the sleeves solid. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3 that are together. What I'm going to do is do this section just to show you how I could have finished all of these at the same time. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Because again, that's up to you to decide how you want to do this, but I could have chained the whole thing instead of doing them one by one. But we're doing the same thing over and over and over again. We're making the same block over and over and over again. So even if you're not moving as quickly as I am right now, we're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, and I have 1, 2, 3. So where am I going to break this? Right in between the 3. So I have this 3 that's together, and I still have this, which is attached to my machine, together. Because I like to check my work. And if you've already seen me rippity rip, you know. So this is the first one that I did, because that's the first one that came off. This is the second one. Here's that first column for number 1. Now I can attach these. And I'm just going to clip them so that I have them in order. Okay. And again, imagine if this was all 4. I could have done all 4 this way. So that just would, again, have been an assembly line just going through. Okay, they're already clipped. Now, if I'm not paying attention to how I do this, I can get them twisted, but that's fine. That's what clips are for. It's not the end of the world if they get twisted, because it's not like we're sewing them together. We're just keeping them all chained together. So it looks like this might let me get the blocks finished, and then I'll be changing the thread after that. We'll see how far we get. But I still have plenty of bobbin. If I use small enough of a stitch, I don't want too small that I can't rip it out if I do something wrong. It really doesn't matter what color thread you use. So I have a ton of gray, white, black, and off-white. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So this one has all the rows done, and we'll open up this one. Okay, just to make sure everything is together, and we'll flip column 1 over onto column 2. And again, I'm not lining them up right the second. I'll line them up when I get them to the machine. I'm just clipping them so they stay in order. Okay. So this is the last of the 9 patches that I need to make. So all of the squares will be together for the rows, and then we will stitch the rows together to make the block. And remember, I'm repositioning these because I didn't take the time to do it when I had it laying flat. I just lined everything up together. So I had them in the right row. Okay. So they're still chain pieced together. I'm only going to work with the first block. If I didn't twist this, and again, it can happen, but that's what clips are for. Here we are on the back. Again, you decide your seams, whether you want to finger press them open or whether you want to press them with your iron. If I choose to finger press these open, I'm just using my finger and just pressing down hard enough on there to just press the seam open. There's not a lot of heat to this, so it's not a press and then it's staying open. It's just helping to secure that seam. And then when I take it to the iron, it gets a good press. The reason why people prefer to open their seams up is because the seam right here, this excess from the seam, it's going to make bulk. If I press it to one side, that means that this side has the fabric plus the two layers from the black part of the seam and the green part of the seam, all on one side. So it gives it a little bit of a hill, if you will. On this side of the seam, there's no hill because all the fabric is over here. If I open the seam up, it guarantees it's a little flatter when going over the seam because there's equal weight on both sides, because I have the black plus its little excess laying over top of it near the seam, and I have the green with its little excess laying over top of it. So it makes a little bit smoother when quilting it, but again, that's up to you. So that's why people prefer to open it. My understanding is that back in the day, before there were long arm quilts, machines, there are folks who would, or there were long arm techniques. When we first learned how to do things, we stitched a lot in the ditch. And your needle or your machine would punch down into the seam. And if you punch down in the seam and punch in the right place, you're punching on the thread and you could cut the thread, which means that the seam then is more vulnerable to begin to separate. So to avoid that, they stitched next to the ditch, they call it. So the seam is the ditch. And then they would stitch next to the ditch to kind of hold that in place rather than stitching in the ditch, which may cause that break. So if you had your fabric going to one side and you stitch next to the ditch, it also secured those seams in place. So when you did the tugging, it didn't necessarily pull your fabric apart, even if you happen to clip that seam. Okay. Hello, everybody. How are you? We are finishing up the 9 patch. And so I'm sewing my rows together for my last 2 blocks. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go ahead and clip this one. We're going to open this one up. If it's not all twisted, yes it is. Yes, it is twisted. It's not twisted on my end, it's just... Now, if I can't find that twist and can't figure out how, snippity snip, snip, snip. Because I don't have time to sit here and play with this. Because as long as those rows are together, I can just snip that like that, and that'll make that all the difference in the world. Okay, I can see what I did. I flipped it. That's why I didn't do what it was supposed to do. Okay. Okay. So I had to separate that one out. It worked on every other one but this one. Okay. So again, I can finger press, and I don't even have to go all the way down, but I'm gonna finger press these open. I just want to make sure that I finger press right where this seam is at the end. Okay, take these two pieces, put them together. The other ones together as a unit. I clipped these because, yeah, I was driving myself bananas and trying to keep that together. And I was like, make an executive decision. It doesn't have to stay together at this point. Chain stitched. And again, you don't have to do that at all. You can clip in between each one. It's not about an issue of thread. It's just, you know, it's become a habit like that for me to do it that way. But I'm lining up my seams and I'm clipping them. And then I'll take it to my machine and stitch those two rows together. Okay, cut those two apart. Move that one out the way for a second. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. And then after we put these two rows together, we'll be ready to press. So let me touch my iron just so that it heats up again. The Oliso iron does have an automatic shut off, which is fabulous with any iron. Because number one, sometimes, while very rare, I will walk away for periods of time, and I want to know that it is off when I walk away. I'm not saying you leave it on and walk away. I'm just saying, like, sometimes you have to walk away. The doorbell rings or something like that. And, you know, you get to talking to the mail woman, and then you forget that it's, you know, oh yeah, that's still on. So either get in a good habit of always turning it off or getting yourself a good shut off. Or even if you're sitting here, something good came on TV and you're watching it, and then you accidentally forget after a period of time that it's on, it'll cut off on you just so that you won't have any problems. Okay, that last row is done for that one, and then we have one more. Remember, this one came undone, right? Well, it didn't come undone, I cut it, but it was in the wrong space. So I do want to make sure that I get it in the right space, because yeah, I will put it upside down and be mad at myself later that I had it in the wrong direction. And again, finger pressing, if I do it on the machine, the seams stay open if I use the iron. If I finger press it, they will want to go back to their normal state. So I just need to play around with those seams just to open them back up and then make sure they line up. Okay, that's one. Okay, so our last row is going together. All of our 9 patches will be done. They need to be pressed, and then here comes the fun part. Okay, we're going to make sure that those are lined up. And sometimes just because of the prints, it's hard to see it for me. And in other fabrics, it's easier. So, you know, use a print that has a lot of black in it with a black Solid. It may pay a couple tricks on your eyes. Okay, cool beans. So both of these are now done, along with the other two that I did. And let's press. So we are right now working on making the 9 patch. We're going to do a disappearing 9 patch block, and then we are going to either turn this into a table topper, or we're going to turn it into a table runner. So again, personal preference, whether you want a table topper or a table runner. The table topper in this case is going to be 2 by 2, which is going to be 4 blocks. If you choose to go with the table runner, it's still going to be 4 blocks, but they'll be 1 by 4. Now, if you wanted to make more blocks, it could be 2 by 4, if that's what you choose to do. If you wanted a wider table runner, but just for the purposes of today, we're only using the 4 blocks. So we are taking these blocks and we are making a disappearing 9 patch block. So we have to set ourselves up. We have to set ourselves up to get to the 9 patch in order to make the 9 patch disappear. Let's see, you took a nap today. How steady is your hand? Ha! Again, the key to most quilting is to press, not iron. So I don't need to move my iron all over the place. However, there are people that absolutely who absolutely iron their blocks, and I'm not mad at them. Ironing for me causes some distortion of the fabric. Sometimes people will do a whole lot of starching of the fabric ahead of time, so they may not have as much distortion. But I prefer to press. Okay, so block number 1 9 patch done. Okay, so I said to start off with a 5-inch block. So while we're setting this up, when you start off with a 5-inch block, and this could be any block, but we're using the 5. The 5-inch block starts off at 5 inches. When you sew it, especially for the center block, there are seams all the way around. And that's why I said you have to be consistent with whatever seam you're going to use. So if you decide for some reason that you're making this into a patchwork jacket of some sort, you want to make sure that if you're going to widen the seam, that you are using the same seam. Otherwise, it won't be square if you do different seams as you go around the block. So consistency is key. So if I'm sticking with a 1/4 inch, I want it to be a 1/4 inch all the way around. And I'm going to show you that with this block in a second, as soon as I get that last seam open. Okay, because you can see the seams here. So what happens is this block that started out as a 5-inch unfinished block. Unfinished means that it's sitting 5 inches by itself when it is not sewn into a project. So a 5-inch unfinished block will finish, especially in the center. Eventually it's going to happen all the way around, but for this block, it's going to start out in the center. It will be a 4.5-inch block. Okay. Let me flip that over. If there are any hills, that means that when I was pressing it on the side to open up the seams, I'm just turning it over to make sure that those seams are laying flat. Okay. And let me pull this up just a little bit. So this block here, let me pull these over here, started off as a 5-inch block like this. And you see how this lays over? You see that overhang on this side and that overhang on this side. These are your 1/4-inch seams. So instead of this now still being this 5-inch block, this is unfinished. Now that it's inside of these seams, inside this block, it's finished. It's now 4.5 inches because we lost a 1/4 on each side. A 1/4 plus a 1/4 is a 1/2. This was originally 5. 5 minus a 1/2 is 4.5. So I have a 4.5-inch seam. I mean, a 4.5-inch finished block. That's important when we do the disappearing knife, when we cut this, because if I treat this like it were 5 inches and I go to measure for the center, what's going to happen is I'm going to be off a little bit one way or the other because I will be thinking 5 inches, which will give me a 2.5-inch cut. And it's not, it's 2.25 because it's 1/2 of 4.5. Okay, and let me lay that out. So some people are like, yeah, quilting is math. Yeah, that's a little math, but you're not gonna be in a bad place. You'll be fine. Okay. And again, welcome in, welcome in. We are working on the 9-patch block. And I apologize if I missed your comment. Please send it again if I did not answer your question. But I'm just going straight across and pressing, just pressing those seams open. And again, I am usually team press to one side, but I'm pressing them open. And again, this is up to you. When I was taught how to quilt, I was absolutely taught to press to one side and not press my seams open. I was absolutely taught that way. And so it's my default. It's the way that I go. It's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. I have beautiful quilts as a result of it, and sometimes it can't be avoided. Sometimes there's a better way to do it, especially when you're working with half square triangles, because what happens is you have a lot of bulk meeting in a center, and you don't want all of that bulk there. So to press the seams open can sometimes reduce the bulk. Okay, and we have one more to go. And God only knows if I took this to school, my kids would go, there's your dress. I don't know what this is. Is this a skirt? Here's your skirt. I think that's a skirt. Here's your jacket. Because these are pieces that are left over. 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago or was it last week? Last week we made the patchwork quilt, we quilted the pillowcase, and these are some of the same fabrics that I use for the pillow cover. So I have plenty of scraps. I like to call these my free scraps because I've made the thing. I've made the garment, I've made the jacket, I've made the skirt, I've made the dress, and this is what's left over that could be somebody else's trash. And so because I can take this along with the black fabric that I have to create something else, it didn't cost me much because I already had the scraps in my stash. And if you're lucky and you live near another sewist or a quilter who doesn't like their scraps, they have a tendency to throw those out. And it's like, don't throw those out, I'll take them. And then you can absolutely use them to create projects that you can gift and or sell from somebody else's trash. So it's a trash to treasure type thing. Okay. Get that out the way. And let's move our 4. Again, we have 4. Hey, Coco. Okay. So we have these 4. And what I want to do now is to cut. Remember, the center one should be, keyword is should, 4.5 inches. So half of 4.5 is 2 1/4. So I'm using this line. Now, tell me where mine. Need my rotary cutter. Measure twice, cut once. I'm looking for that line for the 2 1/4. And I should be dead center. Use my ruler, my rotary cutter. I'm gonna cut right down the center. I'm gonna lift this up. So now I have 2 pieces. I can rotate this if it's easier. Realign them, because if they're off, it's gonna matter. And then do the same thing for the second cut. Again, I'm checking my ruler on my lines to make sure that they line up correctly. And you saw that some parts I pushed through, right? This is the one where I'm taking my time to look to make sure that everything is lined up the way that I need it to go. And if it's not, I'm going to make sure it's lined up before I cut it. And right down the center. Set that right there. And here we are. We have our 4 blocks. So we took our 9 patch and we cut them up. Remember, I told you the center is the one that gets cut into 4s. These out here on the edges stay whole, and the centers were cut into rectangles. So now I can decide how I want them to go. So you can decide what that looks like for you. I have been landing on this as a layout for myself. I like the 2 in the center for the small ones, 2 out here for the larger ones. That's just me. Let me move my iron out of the way. And I'm going to move these blocks in the order that I want them to go in, right off to the side, and do the next one. We're starting with this block. And so I didn't say it before, the block itself, right? We had 5 + 5 + 5, 15, not sewn together. Each of these has a 1/4 inch taken off of each side. So there's a 1/2 inch of fabric from the 5s on each side. So 5 + 5 + 5 is 15. 1/2 + 1/2 is 1. So these blocks should finish at 14 inches. And you can kind of see from here to here, and if I did the measurement, that this would be 14 inches. So I can see that it fits inside the block, that it's absolutely, whoops, 14 inches. Might be a little tad off or a little tad short, but right now it's not short enough where it matters. If it were, let's say, let me show you this one, right? If it looked like this, I got a problem. If it's supposed to come all the way to here. If it's like that, I can get a little bit of stretch in my fabric that'll allow me to get it to where I need it to go. So it depends. Thank you, Coco, for the rose. It just depends on how far out it is. But like I said, if it's close enough, it works. So this is a 14-inch block right now. Half of 14 is 7.5. So if you are a little concerned with, thank you for the TikToks, Carmen. If you're concerned with that, you could measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then here's the, if you're using your mat, and here's the 7-inch mark for that. So if your eyeballs don't allow for you to get this line here when you're doing it, you can absolutely use your cutting mat and know that if you line your ruler up, if everything aligns all the way around like this does, and I can absolutely line this up, make sure it doesn't shift at the 7-inch mark, and I can cut this way. My advice to you is pick a team. So I wouldn't switch on and off, but you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's on that dotted line. I'm just lining my ruler up with that edge. And Johnny's going to live a little dangerously with how she cuts. Move my hand out the way. And you get the same cut. So you can either do it at the 2 1/4, or you could use your mat. That's totally up to you. And again, this is the way that I'm choosing to flip it for that center block. If I choose, I could go any which way, because they're all the same, right? Let's keep it a beam. So they're all the same. So however I decide to arrange it, if I said to myself, you know what, I want to even mix it up even more, I could. So I could bring in this one. And I could do it for each of the blocks. And I'm going to leave this as is, but just so you can see it, right? So I could mix them all up like this. You can decide what that looks like for you. I'm going to leave this the way that I had it. But just know that if the blocks are all the same size, it doesn't matter how you mix them. But you do want to keep the same layout. So whatever you use for one, that's the one you want to use for the other. And I'm just going to stack these on top of the ones that I already did. And let's do the last two. So I have a turntable. I'm being lazy, to be quite honest with you. This is a big mat cutting surface, and I have the turntable that goes with it. I don't think it fits the 14-inch block though. So I could absolutely use the turntable that would help with this cut. But I don't. I'm not using it. So I'm going to cut this the same way that I did the other ones, the other first one. So again, I can find that center. Some people don't like to use the mat. They prefer to use the ruler. Again, personal preference. And I know right where that rotary is. I packed it up for Christmas when I decorated down here. And I was like, let me look. No, I did it for Thanksgiving. And I never brought it back up. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a solid line this time because I moved it down. I'm lining my ruler up. So you can either use your mat or you can use your ruler. That is up to you. So there are some quilters who will swear by their ruler and they are absolutely not using their mat, but we're using the line and we're lining the edge of the square up with our mat. They are, and you can absolutely, if you use a, you could, so IKEA has a Lazy Susan, the wooden one. So if you would have to make your mat sturdy enough to fit, like I would use glue, like figure out some glue that could lay flat, but if you could lay it on some sort of harder surface and then put it on top of that Lazy Susan mechanism, or even probably from like Walmart or somewhere like that, it would absolutely allow you to create something that could work for that Lazy Susan versus purchasing it. There's some things in this world that I'm just not doing, and that's one of them. So I did get mine from Big Mat. They are back in stock, but again, far be it from me to tell anybody how to spend their money. But like I said, that is a suggestion for where you could get one to make it. Okay, so here we go here. And yes, I will post that over onto, this will get posted onto YT, so you'll be able to go back. So I have been posting all of the videos onto that space as well. Okay, so just for the sake of argument, right, we are going to cut this again the original way. So just to back up, what I suggested before was that there's 2 ways that you could cut this. I could either, which is what I did for the last 2. The first one I did differently, but for the last 2, thank you, Carmen, for the roses. For the last 2, I found the center. This is a 14-inch block. I found the center of the block by lining it up with my mat, and then I just line the ruler up and cut down the center. If I prefer to use the ruler and not use the mat, sometimes your blocks are a little wonky and you want to make sure it gets as accurate as you possibly can. You could find the 2 1/4 inch mark on your ruler. And if this is lined up and you find the 2 1/4 inch ruler, it's still going to be on the line. If you have it lined up with the ruler. If you don't have it lined up with the ruler like this, then of course it doesn't look like that. But you want that 2 1/4 inch mark. And again, you know, however you choose to do it is up to you. Oops. So they're in half. This is where that turntable will come in nice, because no, I wouldn't have to do this. Or I could stand up and just turn the ruler, but that would be too much like right. If I wanted to, I could line this back up with the mat again. But I'm measuring using the ruler, finding that 2 1/4 inch. Making sure that I line it up with the seam. And again, it's already lined with the mat. Sometimes when you can't do both. And it it looks like it's lined up, but sometimes the rulers are a scant off. And so you don't want to do both because one might throw your measurements off. So you're picking a team. Either it's team 2/4 of an inch, or it's team line it up and cut it right down the center. It's really, real rap, all rulers don't cut the same. Don't ask me why. Okay. And here's the last one. And again, my flip is just that. But again, you can determine your layout for what you want. Now I'm going to move my other pieces back. They're all in the same direction. If I want to mix and match them up, I have that choice. Okay. Hey, Shamir, did I miss the Y? Hi, Crafty Mammy, how are you? Mamie? Crafty Mommy? Okay. One of the things that I like to point out, what did we start with last week? We started with a 4-patch. What did we cut these blocks down into from a 9-patch? Into a 4-patch. So that's why it helps to understand your patches, because a patch is just a block, but in that block could be several pieces. So if I know how I'm going to work with my 4-patch, I've got this. So my 4-patch, I'm just going to flip over my second column on top of my first, or my first on top of my second. I still have a little bit of thread. Look, I'm living dirty here, but I want to get rid of that. Okay, so we have 4 that we need to do. We're going to flip these over, and we're going to chain piece all of them. So we're going to do top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. And I am sewing a 1/4 inch again. You can do a little bit of a back stitch. Sometimes, to be honest with you, I don't like back stitching because your girl makes mistakes. And let me tell you, when you have to seam rip after you back stitched, ugh. So sometimes I don't like doing it, but I'll do it. It helps to hold the blocks in place a little bit better if you do that. The great thing about this is that none of your seams at this point are lining up. So I don't have to worry about clipping them together because they're not lining up at any point. The way that I've laid it out. Okay, so the seam is here and here. The seam is here and here. So they're staggered, so I don't have to worry about that part. So I am using, this is my Emerald Husqvarna Viking. It is the oldest machine that I have in my collection. I've had this baby, man, this has been my rider for over 20 years. It is not a computerized machine. I wanted to step up outside of a Singer when I bought the machine, and I went to my local Joann's and they had Husqvarna Vikings there. And what was important to me in that moment was to make sure that I had access to repairs and classes. So I opted to go with the Viking, not knowing much about machines at the time, not really thinking about quilting at the time, but it was convenience. Since then, I love the machine. I think it you know, when something is faithful and good to you, you rock with it. So this has been wonderful to me, and this has been wonderful because it has helped me to make a lot of clothes. But it has also, it's going to classes with me as I've taken quilting classes and things like that. So it has traveled very well in my car, in my trunk, in my back seat, to whatever classes I go into. That's why I call it my rider. So now this still goes with me everywhere that I go. I do have other Viking machines upstairs. I have a Viking Opal that is computerized. I have a Ruby, which is also a embroidery machine. And let me not say that too many times too fast, because then I'll see Joshy. Yes, I absolutely use my scraps up. I will make pillows, I will make teddy bears, I will make bags out of the scraps, because yeah, we're not wasting scraps. So I absolutely do love to do this. This project here is a disappearing 9-patch. So we have now we constructed the 9, so far today, we had our blocks. We started with a 5-inch block. So here is a pile, because I have plenty of scraps. So here is a pile of squares. And we laid them out and decided how we wanted to lay them out. So after that decision was made, we made the 9-patch blocks. We talked about the construction of the 9-patch blocks and how to put them together, what my method was in putting them in rows and then sewing the rows together, and how you could either finger press and or iron them. That's up to you. Again, these are all chained together. Each unit I did top to bottom. So that, remember, it was a 4-patch, so it's 2 by 2. So I'm going to cut these to undo these, I should say. And they should go right back in their same order if I did this right. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This all my clothes look like this too. So my kids last year at school, they were like, "Are you African?" I was like, and I'm dumb, so I was like, "Well, huh? Why would you think that?" And they were like, "You're always wearing the African print." I was like, "Okay, duh. Great observation." No, I just love colorful things, and therefore, that's why I am. Okay, so everything is pressed. I'm sorry. Everything is has been put together. They're still chained. So you see, as I move one, I'm moving everything because those chains are still in the centers of each of the 2 units. So they're all together in rows. I can again press this open one side. It's up to you. I can press with my fingers, or I can take them to the iron. Okay, so if I choose to open these up, I can open them up just to remain consistent. And again, if I finger press them on each side, I can take them to the iron last. This is for personal preference. Again, for me, I'm okay with it, but if you prefer to press them, you can press them. None of the seams, again, are still matching up, except for the center seam. So this is the one that matters the most. I'm going to line it up and clip. Because this is short enough, I can just line the edge to edge, and then I don't have to clip. If this were longer, I would do some more clipping. And again, if you feel the need to backstitch, you can do it. You don't need a lot of it. You just want enough so that your seams don't come apart as you're sewing. Because ask me how many quilts I have where the seams have come apart, and either I have to decide again to live dangerously, or if I have to go back in and fix those seams because they're coming apart too much where it's going to bother me. And this is a quick project. So of course, you know, it's taking me longer because of the explanations and the running of my mouth, but I could really finish all 4 blocks in like an hour. And I'm just getting up in there. And I'm pressing, finger pressing those open right at the seams at the tops. And I'm going to clip. Line up my edges. I'm impressed that that thread is lasting longer than I thought it was. It's probably not going to get to the final construction, but it should make it through all these blocks. Rest in peace, Joann's, with my thread. Even though, you know, I shop online and get my thread from somebody else. I'm not getting buy 2 get 3 free. Those days are over. But I also probably have enough thread that I really don't need to buy any. But that's beside the point. I think Joann's going out of business was, you know, was God's way of saying to me, girl, use what you have. Because you just going out and buying stuff because it's on sale. Okay, line that up. 2 more blocks to go. So we're sewing the rows together. And then these blocks are, the blocks are finished. And then it is a matter of sewing all the blocks together. Well, we're going to press them and then we'll sew them. Oops. I forgot to backstitch that, but I will live. Okay, and one more. And that's why I went with a smaller project, especially on a weeknight. On a Saturday, we would have made a quilt. But this is the same concept, whether you were making 1 block for a pillow, or if you were making it for a bag, you could make 1 block or 2 if you wanted it front and back. You could do the same method for the 2 blocks, if you will, or you could do it for 16 blocks. This would have been the same thing. So we're only making these, but you absolutely could have made more. So if you have more scraps, and even after today, you're like, you know what? I still have more fabric and I have more scraps. I don't even want a table topper. I got this. I can make a quilt out of this. Then you could absolutely go back and add more on to the finished product. So you are not married to a table topper and a table runner. A lot of table toppers and table runners are born out of quilts, or a lot of quilts are born out of table toppers and table runners. Okay, so we have these chained together. We're going to separate those out. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't have the iron on, so we're going to take this back and place it on the iron. And we'll press these all open, and our disappearing 9 blocks, 9 patches will be done. So then the only thing that we need to do is stitch them together in the way that we would have them go for the final quilt top. I usually do not do an entire process for a quilt in one live because it's a lot. If it was a Saturday, I would rock and roll with you. Either I would quilt it on my domestic, and that's this emerald here, or I could do it on my Bernina long arm. Well, it's a sit-down machine. It's not on a frame. So I control the fabric, not the machine. On a frame, you move the machine. On the table, you move the fabric. So it's like a step up from your domestic, a big step, but it's a step up from your domestic. Because on the domestic, you move the fabric and not the machine. So if it's not on a frame, you don't move the machine. So I'm just giving this a good press. Once I get everything together, if I feel the need to starch it, I could starch it at that point. I've done some starching already to the fabric. Sometimes those seams just don't want to lay like I want them to lay, or I've gone over them and pressed them back down in a direction that I didn't want them in. Okay. So again, just going back over, I come on top of this just to make sure they lay flat. If my blocks don't want to behave, that's when I may use either a little steam. So you will see quilters that do use steam, or they use starch. And that just helps the blocks to lay flatter, especially if they don't want to behave that way. So here's one of the starches I use, and I'm almost out of it. And you don't need a lot. And that just helps them to just lay a little flatter. I dry my starch by just going over top of it. Some folks will let the starch sit in a little bit. So then here is one of the finished blocks. Just make sure that I did not miss. Do I make things with jeans? I have not made a quilt out of jeans. I've made a quilt out of flannel. However, if I were not the pitiful friend that I am, somebody before the pandemic gave me jeans. I absolutely cut those jeans up as she asked and have not made the quilt. Like one day I'm just going to pop up over her house and I'm going to be like, here you go. She wanted it to work like a rug on the floor. You know, she had the vision, and I don't know if she remembered or she's just too afraid to ask. I'm like, girl, those were your jeans. Ask. And they're sitting right in the place where it was like, girl, you need to finish these. Maybe I'll do a live. I need to just put that a little bit. Maybe I'll do a live and actually get those jeans out the way. Go hang out with the No Sleep crew while they're working on jean fabric and get that one done. You might be inspiring me to finally finish that. And I don't say that like I'm too terrible of a friend, only because it's not like that came with a cost. It's not like I said, oh, well, you can pay me this and I'll do that. And not that she wouldn't, but she is also a great makeup artist. And when a sister needs her face beat, She will beat your face to the gods when she does her makeup. But she always looks very, very pretty in her makeup. So absolutely, you know, we trusted her with ours and she did not disappoint. Okay. So again, if it doesn't lay flat, and you can see I'm not wetting this. I don't have to wet it a lot, and I can absolutely go back in later and press it a little bit flatter. I'm trying to get my little pieces out while I can. That's 2. Now, back in the day, you might not have seen me iron any of this until the end. And it wasn't the end of the world if I didn't. But as you can see, it gets, like, you know, it's a little bit more effort, right? If you're waiting until the end. So if I had ironed all of those pieces when I got to the rose, then I wouldn't be doing the rose now. But again, it's not the end of the world because I finger pressed to the center. So that part was fine. And then now I'm just going back in and pressing those center seams open. The center seams are your choice, whether you want them opened or closed. And I'm just flipping it over again to make sure that everything lays flat. And one more. And then we still have 2 more seams that we will have to press once we finish this, but then it'll be finished when we do that because we only have 4 blocks. Now, I will absolutely use this fabric all year long. I wear it all year long. But if you're very much into decor for certain times of the year, then this is a great way, if you have this type of fabric, to get some things up for Kwanzaa or for African American History Month. So if you're doing a Kwanzaa table and you need some sort of topper to go under your kinara, then this is like perfect. Some of us have the kinara, but it's still sitting in our cabinet because we haven't used it. So the only types of classes that I really do, if you want to call them that, are what I do on social media. My little honeys at school, they have a sewing class. I don't even know the last time they went. They're on my SLA side of the school. They're not on our Ben Franklin side. So I donated some things to them. I had a donor that donated some things to them. But I don't really get a chance to do it because I'm too busy dealing with drama after school. So sometimes I don't get an opportunity to hang out with the students. Okay, so we have the blocks. And again, we're going for a totally scrappy look. I could have, if I wanted to, and I didn't have enough scrap, but if I had, let's say, well, I probably did have enough of these. I could have used these for all of the blocks, so they would have been the same throughout. So that would have been the thing that tied them all together. But again, that's totally up to you. You'll see that in patterns where somebody will say, use this, like get 4 of these. They're the one in the center. And then all of these blocks will be black and they'll carry throughout. And then these blocks would all be gold and they would carry throughout. But again, that's, you know, up to you. These blocks now, if I get them in the right direction for however I want them to go. You can see that it makes a cute little thing in the center here. These blocks are both going in this direction. The big blocks are going in this direction. So I can now put these end to end to create a table runner. Or I'm going to make sure they're all going in the right direction. I can put them like this and have them be a table topper. So it's totally up to you which way you want to go. I was going with the table topper, not the table runner. So this is the way that I'm setting it up, but you could absolutely go across and do a 1x4. I'm doing 2x2, and what do we call a 2x2? A 4-patch. So since we're calling it a 4-patch, you know what we're gonna do. We're gonna flip and flip. I still have thread as I'm living dangerously on that spool. I'm impressed. Now, if I needed this color, I would have ran out a long time ago. Okay. When I have a lot of pieces, I will spray starch at the end and take it up on my big machine. So I absolutely will do that. And make sure that these are going in the direction that I want them to go into. I'm going to clip on the end just to get it out the way. Did I switch it? So, which is fine. I'm going to, I will go back around and we'll open it back up again. Because sometimes when you run your mouth, yep, okay, so these are still going in this direction and you can't see it, but those are going in that direction. And did I flip it? So one of the things is I have two of these together. I don't want that. So I'm going to flip that way. So that way those two aren't together. So all of my little ones here and here are going up this way. And these are going up this way. And then you can't see it, but those two are going up that way too. And then let me flip that back over that way. So I probably rotated it, knowing me. And I'm just going to clip that center, but I'll flip that in a second. Because absolutely, tell me that I messed something up, because I will not be paying attention. And absolutely, when I go to lay it out, I'm like, something's not right. And sometimes I will get all the blocks together. And then when I look at it, I'm like, something's not right. And I will have to go right back in and fix it. Or I live with it. So there are times when I will absolutely make a mistake. And then I have to determine if I can live with it or if I need to get the seam ripper. Sometimes it's a me mistake. And it just means that I might have two colors sitting next to each other. And I might go, you know what? Nobody's going to care. And then I may go to bed at night and it might bother me. So then I get up and I rip. If it is just the wrong row, I'm ripping. Because there's just some things that you know as well as somebody else, whoever's getting it, is going to look at it and go, oh my goodness. Now, I don't mean no harm. There are some people who I know are not going to see that. And if I know they're not going to see it and never ever going to see it because they're going to be too happy that I finally made them something, then I'm not worried about that. But I know that if somebody is, you know, if I'm gifting it, I do try to make sure that it is as wonderful as possible. I don't want to say perfect because I don't necessarily strive for perfection. I try to go for accuracy. Okay. So again, now these two pieces are together. I love how that creates like that little whirl right in there. And then these two. So again, I can flip these. Open up that center seam. Because I'm opening mine up. I'm not pressing to one side. And then we'll get this one. Okay, I'm just kind of massaging it with my finger to open that seam up. And we're gonna line up those seams. I'm actually putting those two together. Okay. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I have this one and this one, and they're actually together. So I'm gonna break this chain because I can flip this up top and now none of them match. It runs into it. This would run into this, and I don't necessarily like that. But again, that's that flip to make sure that you like what you like before you stitch it together. So when you lay them out, you would pay attention to the layout. And again, you may be concentrating a little bit more if you're doing this individually rather than trying to either follow a live or to actually being on live. But I caught it when the line up. So I just want to make sure that I didn't have it together. Is it the end of the world for those two to be together? Absolutely not. But I just decided I didn't want it, and I knew I could fix it without doing any ripping. Because if I had put it together, we wouldn't have been ripping it out. I'm going to clip the end. I have a seam right here and a seam right here that line up. So I want to make sure they line up. And I'm going to clip it. I'm going to clip this end. And then I'm going to find that seam right here because these two should line up. So I'm clipping the seams that line up first. Because if I'm going to ease anything in, if the blocks are not the same size, and they shouldn't be too far off, I'd rather give in here than to give where the seams need to line up. I want my seams to line up. Where they don't line up, here and here, I can kind of stretch a little bit and not worry about that because they're not meant to line up anyway. I cannot believe that I am going to make it with that thread. I am impressed because usually this does not happen. I say that I usually get more respect out of my stuff when I'm on a live. My machine doesn't act up when I'm on a live. My materials usually don't act up when I'm on a live. It's like they know. Do not embarrass. Like my kids at school, don't embarrass me. Like like I told my niece when we went to Target one day, and I said, "Now we're going in this store." And I think her father was in the car. We had just come from a buffet. And my mother said that my niece got upset and fell out on her in the middle of Kmart. And I was like, yeah, that wouldn't happen to me. I was like, who is this mother? And what children did she raise? Because she wouldn't have allowed us to do that either. And so, like, you gonna dare me to take my niece into Target and not have that same experience? I told my niece on the way into Target, you could fall out on that floor if you want to. And you will be left in the middle of Target. And your father will have to retrieve you. Let's see, that's what I'm talking about. And so we got in Target. She tried it. I said, don't ask for nothing. I'm not buying you anything. I'm only in here to get whatever it was that we were in Target to get. Well, we walked up and down that aisle to get stuff. Now, mind you, this chick tried it. She didn't try it, but she tried, like, I said, don't ask for nothing. So because, the G family is a bunch of mass manipulators, she was like, oh, I don't have one of those. I don't have one of those. I don't have one of those. So you were waiting, I guess, for me to say, oh, niece, I'll get you that. But first of all, I was poor. Money. Like, first of all, I couldn't afford to buy myself whatever I was getting ready to go in the store to get. Like, we were going in there for a purpose. But I was like, oh, okay. She walked all around that store telling me everything she didn't have. But guess what she didn't do? Then when we got up to the counter, the woman said, oh, she's such a nice student, a nice child. She's so polite. She didn't have a choice. She was with Auntie Jen. And Auntie Jen wasn't having it. Look, I would have dropped everything and would have left her. He could have left the store. I told her, I said, I'd have left you. Okay, everything is together. We're going to get this suppressed. So I would have left her right there in the middle of the store. And like I told her, your daddy would have came and got you. Because I wasn't going to do it. But I didn't do it, like, even as a teacher. Like, that's, like, teacher struggles. I never had those, like, major problems. Now, did my students try me? Sure. Because every child, has its moment, and nobody's perfect. But I used to tell the parents, I had students and, like, nobody would take them anywhere. And we were going to see the orchestra, the Kimmel Center down here in Philly. And that's a wonderful experience because there are adults that haven't seen an orchestra, let alone children. And we were all going. And the mother said to me, I'll keep my son home. Now he's in the 7th grade. And he was a challenge. I told her, he's in my group. He'll be fine. And we went there and we had an awesome time. And he wasn't the only one, but everybody who didn't know how to act was with me. And I like to call myself evil. I said, look, you don't want evil because if evil goes off, it's a problem. So you already know. And then I told him, your parents told me that, I got free reign. Not that, I want to lose my job, but it's just enough just to say it. They told me I could do whatever I needed to do if you act up. Kids thought that I could, but, I like my job. But, like I said, we had a ball. We took our students skating this year. No holds barred. I told the students, this is your one get out of jail free card. I am not going to look at you and go, no, you can't go. Now, you could lose the privilege if you don't act like you have sense in school. And then I'm like, no, you can't go because, you're just doing too much here and I have to take a privilege from you. But I'm going to give you the privilege. So we took almost 200 students to the roller rink in the middle of the day. And I told them, I said, look, who doesn't want to come to school and go skating? Why sit in school and learn? So we went to the skating rink and we had a ball. And one of the teachers who doesn't like to go on trips, he was like, I actually had fun. Of course you did. Because Evil went on the trip. And I already told you, I don't care. I will sit your child down. Your child will not skate the rest of the day if they don't know how to act. And it's a skating rink. This is the one place where they can be wild and do whatever. So hey. But I knew that some of our students, because of their behaviors, had never been on a school trip before. So you need to understand what it is to go on a school trip, to know that when you have the privilege taken from you, you know that it was a privilege. So I was like, yep, we'll be fine. And we were. And I know it's time to retire because I've had too much luck, but I've never had a problem on a trip. Okay. So here you go. This is our table topper for a disappearing 9-patch. And it is completely scrappy. It is just all the scraps that you have. I could decide to come out with a border to border around it if I would like. I could take another, like a thinner piece of black fabric, and I could go all the way around it. Thank you, Miss Belinda. I could go all the way around it with this black, and then go in with another piece of ankara all the way around, just to bring that out if I wanted it bigger. Right now, not that you can see my whole table, it is going from edge to edge. So if I wanted to spill over a little bit, I could add that there. Usually I'll turn it like on an angle just to, make it look the way I want it to look, but it can go straight. And again, you could have your vase in the center of it. You could have your other little items on either side, and it absolutely will bring out like that table right in the center. If you chose, again, I could make 12 more of these and then add them together like a 4-patch, and this could absolutely be a quilt. So if you're using that fabric to make dresses and things like that, take your scraps. You can put it together in that 9-patch, cut that 9-patch up, and absolutely create something that could be a quilt as a throw. It could be a quilt for your bed, a lap quilt. It could be a baby quilt, whatever you prefer. But I love the fact that this was scrappy. So this cost me the yardage. So this is the black fabric that I had in my stash that I wasn't, well, I did use it for another purpose, but I still had some left over. But because it's yardage, I still consider that costly fabric to me, because I can make different things out of this. These were absolutely scraps, and I can show you. Not that this is the only thing I have for scraps, but this is like one of my scrap bins. And so I have all of this fabric that has been left over from projects that I've worked on that I absolutely have no purpose for. And there are some people who will take this fabric and they will absolutely toss it because they have no purpose for it. Some of us will put it in a poof, and we're like, okay, we can use this, like the pop of red. Yes, I do too. I like the reds that pop out. So they would take this. Me, and mind you, for what I've just made this with this, and this was all from this, you see the bin is still full. So even with making this, I still have a full bin. Now, I could have broken down the squares and just made it completely scrappy so that you wouldn't have the black in there. That would have been perfect too, because it just would have been all different prints mixed up together. So I absolutely could have done it that way as well. But I have these. Now, there is a difference because some of these in here are strips. Because I did cut them into strips. I'm going to do something with the strips, but you know, here we are. This could be a jelly roll. This could be some sort of strip piecing. So I do have a lot of different purposes, again, that I can do with those scraps. Now that I have them left over. So the bigger scraps I will make like the teddy bears out of. I will make bags. I will make the purses, mini quilts. So I'll find purposes for the bigger pieces, but then when I get down to the smaller pieces, I can do this. So it is totally up to you. Again, you can see like where some of those hills are for this. This will lay really flat once I take it upstairs to my big iron. I will give that a great press with a little bit of steam that will flatten all these out. Once all this is flattened out, I will make a decision on how I'm going to quilt it. This is scrap to me. So when I quilt this, I will probably use like a black thread, if not a variegated thread, but I will probably use like a black because it goes with so many different things. And this is my opportunity to test out a technique. So I might, if I want to learn feathers, right? And it's not going to work with this one, but if I wanted to learn feathers, this is the thing to work on it because this was scrap. So it looks like something, and the quilting really won't matter, but it gives me the opportunity to play around with some things just because this was a scrap project. So, you know, it's going to go on the table. The stuff is going to sit on top of it, and you are not even going to be able to see some of the quilting to worry so much that, oh, she didn't have this perfect design. No, we're not going to worry about that. You can, if you're on your domestic machine, you can absolutely just stitch lines and call it an afternoon. So I might, these are 2.5 inch, these are about 2.25, about 2.25 inch. No, we finished the seam. So this was 2.25. So this is like 2. So this is like a 2-inch seam. So I mean a 2-inch block. So what I would do is probably do 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, somewhere around there, just do strips, and then turn in the other direction, and then do strips that way as well. Do lines. So I would probably just do that and call it an afternoon. And what I may do between now and the end of the month is maybe just do an easy quilting project. I did do that with the pillow. So when we made the pillow last week, if I don't drop 20 other things on the floor when I do this. So when we did the pillow last week, remember we just did these lines for the pillow. So what we're doing, thank you for the 2026s. So what we're doing here is the same thing, but what I'm suggesting is that for this one is to maybe just do another line right along there as well, just to give it a little bit more quilting in between. Okay. So that pillow was done last week, and we did that on the domestic. So it's the same way here. You have that opportunity just to do those lines. You can either go straight down or you could do them on a diagonal, but it's the easiest way to do it on your domestic machine. And this is small enough. It is finishing at about 26.5 inches square. So this is big enough that, or small enough that it will fit in your domestic, and it will fit nicely. And like I said, what I will probably do is I'll press this out and either do a video or go live. I'll decide when, and show how I would set this up to quilt this. And I won't do anything difficult with it because I know that most people will probably be working with a straight stitch and not like a meander or something else like that until you get those tools together. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. So that's what we have again for today. We have our disappearing 9 patch. It is all patched up together. So like you don't even see that it's a disappearing 9 patch unless you know the elements of the disappearing 9 patch. But if we take it and we fold this to get the one block, we can see that 9 patch better in there. So you can see that disappearing 9 patch there. And then you can see it here. And because of the types of fabric that I use, these right here, the reds, these are the same thing, but they don't look like it. And it was just the way that it lined up actually, which is a miracle that I got these two here in the center and actually got these two out here. So it looks like I have two different fabrics, but it's the same print. It's just the way that, luck of the draw, how it got cut. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So again, this makes a great piece. It will make a great piece for a table topper. You could make this bigger if you choose. Like I said, that's up to you. This could be, right now, this is a 2x2. I could add another 2 on here to make it a 3x6, and then add another row of 3 on here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. And that would give me a 3x3. So I could make this a 3x3. Usually, if we keep things square, then they are in square numbers. So a 2x2 is 4, a 3x3 is 9, a 4x4 is 16. And of course, a 5x5 is 25. So usually when we're working in squares, most people will do quilts that way. Some people will cut one less short. So we might do a 3x4 or a 4x5, just because we want the width to be shorter than the length for the lap quilt. So you'll make decisions in terms of what you want it to look like, and sometimes it will be dictated off of how much scrap you have. So hopefully this helps you today with thinking about like a new project that is easy enough for a beginner to do. The reasons why I say that it's easy is because you can put the patches together for the 9 patch. So that's an easy enough process. Cutting it right down the center works. And even if it's a little wonky, the pieces are still going to come back together with a 1/4 inch seam. So it'll be wonky, but because it's so scrappy, you won't even be able to really tell it. So you're not losing anything. It's not like you resized it down to a different shape. So even if you're a little off, your blocks may look a little off, but like I said, once you put it together, nobody will be able to tell. And then there aren't many seams that we had to line up. And that's perfect for a beginner quilter, next to not having to line any seams up. That's like perfect, because the biggest struggle is making sure that the seams line up. That's the biggest struggle for a beginner quilter, because and then it's a struggle even for more advanced people, because we can't stand it when the stuff doesn't line up. But there are places here, and this is a bad example, but it's a little off, but it's not major. But you can't see it, first of all, because of all the colors that I have going on here. You can't even see much of anything that's going off here. I can have this as a little bit better of an example here, but you can see it's a tad bit off. They kind of overlap just a little bit right up in here. And again, but you're not going to see that from a distance. Nobody's getting that close up to say, you know what, your points don't match. Now, if this were in a quilt show, they might care. And I'm talking about getting juried. I'm not talking about just hanging up. They might care. And nobody else is going to care about that. So this is absolutely, hey, Anna, how are you doing, darling? Your ears should have been burning. They were getting on me earlier because they were like, you should use a turntable. And I was like, yeah, I have one of those. So it was a good thing you didn't come in to be able to get on me too about that. But I have used it. I just didn't use it today. So, I would like to try the disappearing night. So absolutely. So again, try it. And one of the things that I will suggest as well, maybe use a little bit bigger of a block. This block finishes, the 9 patch itself finished at 14 inches square. The disappearing 9 patch, this one here, finishes at 13.5 inches square. So you could add, and that's using a 5-inch block, a 5-inch patch. So 9 5-inch patches. If I went up to maybe 6 or 7, wouldn't this make a great front of a pillow? So I can make this bigger by going to 6 inches or 7 inches square. So 9 squares that are 6 or 7 inches would give me a bigger size finished block to be able to make this into a pillow. So you take one 9 patch, and this could be the front of your pillow. This could be the front of your tote bag. So this orphan block could exist all by itself as a unit. I could take 2 plain units and put it next to it on either side. And so this could be the focus. And then I could have just 2 prints that go next to it. I don't have to create the additional blocks, but start with the 1 block, make the 1 block, and then go from there. So it's a great way to get this in, and to make sure that you are doing, the things correctly and getting everything to line up. But again, you'll see here, and it's easier to use this one because this is lighter. You'll see that it lines up here. So I had to line up here. This was the only lineup in this one after I, cut it up. When I put them together, the only lineup was here. When I put the 2 together, it was here, here, and then on the next one, which was here. So I didn't have a lot of seams that I had to line up. Okay. So like I said, that's the great thing about it, but it's also very forgiving. And that's the other part. It's about the colors. It's about the fabric. It's about how much you want to mix and match to get it to work. And there's nothing better than something that is going to be so scrappy that in theory, it's going to go with whatever you have. So this would absolutely work. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for getting me to 24K in likes. Thank you for tapping the screen this evening. Thank you for interacting with the live. I apologize. I know that I missed some of the comments. So hopefully I did go back in to answer those comments for you. Please inbox me if there is anything that you would like to see, or you would like to do. This is my heavy month. So this is the month that I have committed to beginners and to making sure that I am posting videos for folks to follow. So there are some other things that I will be doing with 9 patches and patchwork this week. Next week, we will be focusing in on creating blocks because now we have learned how to make the half square triangle. We have learned how to make that a couple different ways and then to make a bunch at one time. We have worked on the 4 patch. We've done a disappearing 4 patch. We've talked about patchwork. We have made the 9 patch. We have done now today a disappearing 9 patch. We have made a pillow. We made a quilt the first week with our half square triangles. So now it's time to begin to bring all that together with everything that we have to be able to create some blocks that we can use for a quilt. So of course, I am looking for a simple, easy project that we can do that either focuses on 1 block that's big or focuses on a few little blocks. We'll see how that goes. I might make the same block over and again, but I'm debating on what that will look like for next week because I try to keep it easy enough where I can finish the top or finish the project in the time that we're allotted. So I try not to go over 2 hours, even though I'm talking right now. But that's what we're working on. So hopefully, stay tuned. I will be posting everything so that you see it. Thank you for the roses. Thank you for the 2026s. Thank you so much. But again, stay tuned. Please make sure that you are, again, inboxing me and letting me know if there is something that you want to see. I am more than happy to create the videos or to do the thing. If anybody is interested in doing a sew along, please let me know that as well. And we can try to get something together because I'm good with that as well. Hey, Julian. So thank you again. Have a great evening. I took a nap. That's why I'm wired. So I'm going to come off of here and make sure that I get to bed, because somebody has to be at work at 7:30 tomorrow, because yeah, the new policy is you can't bring your cell phone in the building. So we were collecting cell phones. I got 80 of them today. So yeah. So thank you. Have a good one, Christy. Hello, how are you? I will post this to YouTube so that it's there if you want to see the repeat. Thank you again, and have a good one.